What if the Bible's oldest murder mystery wasn't actually a mystery, but a prophecy? Well, today we're digging into a single source text that makes a pretty startling claim that the Mark of Cain wasn't just some ancient punishment, but a sign of the end times. So, let's dive right in.
So, the Mark of Cain, what is it? I mean, for centuries people have been debating this. The Bible is kind of vague, right? It says God put a mark on him for protection, but then crickets. It never actually describes it. Well, the source text we're looking at today, it has a very, very specific answer. And trust me, it's a startling one.
Okay, so to really get where this author is coming from, we've got to start at the beginning. They point to what they see as this huge inconsistency, a real riddle, right there in the book of Genesis, all centered around the punishment for murder.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Look at this. After the flood, God lays down the law for Noah, and it's crystal clear. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. A life for a life. Simple. But wait, what about before the flood? You have Cain and then later his descendant Lamech, both murderers. And what happens to them? They're spared. God explicitly says not to kill them. So you see the problem, right? This is the central contradiction that this entire theory is built on.
So that begs the question, and it's the one the author really hangs their hat on. If humans weren't the executioners before Noah, then who was? Who was dishing out the justice? And if the punishment wasn't death, then what in the world was it? This is the trail of breadcrumbs that leads us right to the heart of their argument.
All right, so now we get to the first major piece of the author's puzzle. The way they see it, the solution to this whole riddle has been hiding in plain sight. They argue that we've been completely misreading a super familiar biblical phrase this whole time.
And here's their answer. Before the flood, it was God himself who directly carried out the judgment. He was the one shedding blood, but that just opens up a whole other can of worms, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. This is the real head-scratcher. We know Cain lived. So if God shed his blood but didn't kill him, what does that even mean? How is that possible? And this right here is where this whole interpretation takes a very, very literal and unexpected turn. It's this exact paradox that the author uses to drop their biggest, most radical claim. It's their answer to what it really means for God to shed blood, and it's the key that they say unlocks the true identity of the Mark of Cain.
Okay, get ready for this. According to the author, shedding blood has nothing to do with killing. They argue it's a literal act to drain the color, the blood, right out of a person's skin. And the result? Whiteness. So the punishment, the mark itself, was a divinely imposed whiteness.
And think about Cain's reaction. Right after he gets his punishment, what does he say? I shall be a vagabond and a wanderer in the earth. Now, according to this text, that's not just him complaining about being kicked out of the family. No, it's a direct description of his new reality, a reality tied to his changed physical appearance.
This leads the author to ask a really pointed question. Who else in the Bible gets described like that? As a wanderer, a vagabond, an outcast. They're trying to connect Cain's fate to another group that was also feared and pushed to the fringes of society. And boom, here's the connection they make. The leper. Specifically, the white and leprous leper. The author is saying Cain's fate, being a marked wanderer, is a perfect match for the social and physical state of a leper, whose skin was described as turning a frightening white, and who, by law, had to be completely isolated.
Okay, so to back up this pretty wild theory, the author points to what they see as their Exhibit A, their primary evidence, a really famous miracle performed by Moses himself.
The argument goes like this. When God needed to give Moses a sign, a really powerful one, to prove who sent him, he didn't just pick some random party trick. He chose something very specific. The author claims it was a demonstration of a power he'd used before, the power to turn a person's skin white, to inflict this very specific mark. And the Bible is super clear about what happened. Moses sticks his hand in his cloak, pulls it out, and it's leprous, like snow. That's a direct quote. And notice that word, leprous. It's the exact same condition the author has already tied to Cain's punishment. For them, this is no coincidence. It's the ultimate proof that God has this power. So now we see how the author takes all these different threads. You've got Cain's mark, the condition of leprosy, Moses' miracle, and weaves them all together into something else entirely. A pretty shocking prophecy about the end times. First, they jump forward to the New Testament. They highlight how Jesus basically redefines murder. It's not just the physical act anymore. He says if you're even angry with your brother, if you have hatred in your heart, you're subject to judgment. So suddenly, the pool of people guilty of Cain's sin gets a whole lot bigger.
And this creates a two-part sign for the end times, one that mirrors the days of Cain and Noah. The author predicts first a massive spike in murder, which, remember, they now define as widespread hatred, and second, a parallel increase in the mark, an increase in whiteness.
Now for the final piece of the puzzle. They pull out this verse from the Gospel of John. Lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. Most people read that as a metaphor, for souls ready to be saved, but not this author. They take it completely literally. The world itself, the fields, will be white, ready for a final judgment.
And that brings us to the full prophecy, all put together. It's this: hatred, which is murder, is going to explode. At the same time, the earth itself will turn to whiteness. And this state of whiteness will eventually reign supreme as the ultimate sign that the final judgment is here.
And then the text leaves us with this: a final, incredibly specific and provocative statement that pulls this ancient sign right into our immediate future. It claims that in the year 2025, there will be someone who actually bears the sign of Cain on his right hand.
So there you have it. That's our look at the very specific theological interpretation laid out in this source text, the Mark of Cain and Moses' leprosy. It's a fascinating journey, right? From an ancient riddle all the way to a modern prophecy. And just to be clear, our goal here was simply to explain the argument exactly as it's presented in the text. Thanks for joining me.